Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Oh my goodness. This debate had me cracking up as I was getting ready. I caught little bits and pieces of what you were saying. But I just wanted to quickly say that part of what inspired this book for me is when we talk about colonialism or, the shift in what happened during colonialism, we often talk about it from a political perspective. But I think that this issue of polygamy is something that is a personal kind of upheaval that took place. And this is not to say I actually I don't want to share too much information about my business because my mom is like, just make sure you let everyone know it's not about our marriage, my parents' marriage. So I just want to say that, and I want to say that, but I do have, not with my parents, but in my family, I do have instances of this situation. So I was writing from a place that I do know what I'm like, I know what that is. And basically, to go back to the story, the idea is that for men of a certain generation, they before pre the and we all know, like, if you have any African ancestry, the idea is that traditionally, if you broadcast your status by having many wives, many children, that was part of it. You have the land. It was a way to say, like, me, I've made it. And under colonialism, then you have this hard break where it's like, it's one man, one wife, and the children in a big house, small family, big house. You're part of the church, you're part of the community in that way. And so these two ideas of marriage sit together. In Ghana today, customary marriage, Mohammedan marriage allow for polygyny, and ordinance marriage, which was instituted under colonialism, is strictly monogamous. And they are all legal. They just can't overlap. So what you have is, I mean, I'm sure many of you know, like, for example, in Ghana, we have the customary marriage we now call engagement. And that's its own ceremony where the dowry is presented. And that would have been sufficed as marriage pre-colonialism. And then now we do white wedding, which is the one that's at the church, or if you go to the marriage registry, registrar. So the idea here that I was trying to sort of examine is, because I do feel that the men are sort of taking advantage, or in the context of this book, I do think that Mauli was taking advantage, but I have some sympathy for him because here's a guy who came from nothing. He is able to build himself and make all this money, and that is the status. So he wants to have his cake and eat it too. He wants to do both. The women are, and I said it in the 1970s because there was a lot going on globally in the 70s, right? So in Ghana, in 1972, there was a military coup in January of 72 that brought in a general called Achampong. And Achampong's administration went on from 1972 to 1978. And it was known as the girlfriend administration. They gave so much of the nation's purse to their girlfriends, extramarital this, extramarital that. My father tells me some stories colloquially, and I'm like, what? He's like, oh yeah, this was one of our Champong's girlfriends. So she had a car. So she was the one who was like splashing the cash on everyone to go out and have fun. And I'm like, wait, what? And you can, this is all in research, you can find it. So girls and women who grew up during this administration, there's that message that's also there that, like, you need to just find someone who's going to sort of bankroll your lifestyle, but it's a very transactional kind of thing. No matter where you fall on the privilege spectrum, because Kokwe is someone who has privilege. And so I think that she's pushing up against all of these things, but she doesn't know how. And she's not doing it necessarily in the right ways, but she's just like, I want something different. And her mom and the women that are married to Mauli, he's a charismatic man. I mean, all of the traits that it takes to sort of, build yourself up, and he has a vision. He does have good things. He has a vision for Ghana, a vision for Africa. But he's also a victim of the culture that he's also been, and his own libido, his own ego cause him to make the wrong decisions. And so I just wanted to kind of play in that space of, you know, we're all sort of born into a circumstance. And, you know, some people, you know, love it and use it to their advantage. And some people say, you know what, this is not working, but I don't know what to do about it. And they're fighting in their different ways to do something about it.
Okay, thank you. So when I first saw the title of the book, My Parents' Marriage, I didn't know what to expect. I thought maybe you were just going to tell some story about, oh, this old man married this old woman and all of that. But when I started reading it, when it started with because you gave a brief history of, I have a record of Nuga marriages. So initially I looked at it because I was listening to the audiobook and I went, okay, why is she giving a record of their marriage? Then I went back and looked and I said, oh, wait, it's the same person. Is he okay? And then as I started reading it, okay, privilege comes into it, wealth also comes into it. Because trust me, a broke man yeah, I know the regulars here, you could know my whatever who broke man. A broke man won't have the audacity. But again, you never know. You never know. My question here was, where do they find these women? Because these kind of men, selfish men, usually find women who are committed to them. Look at Micheline. Is it Micheline or Michelina? Micheline.
Micheline.
Micheline. Even though she left, she had relocated to Togo, but she didn't divorce him. And I think that had to do with her daughters and maybe inheritance.
Yes.
But somehow these men always have women committed to them. And then there are good guys out there who can't even get one date. Why?
I mean, I don't know the answer to that question, but
I wish we had a man here to tell us.
Well, I see my uncle on here, Uncle Albion. Maybe he can shed some light. But I will say that I think that look, Mauli is a charismatic, interesting man. I think that each of the women meet him at different points in his life, and they see that greatness in him, and they love him. They genuinely love him. And so I think that when they are betrayed by him, they are genuinely like, beside themselves. So, you read that there's a part in the book where the different women in the house are jockeying for him. One woman, she's like, I'm going to cook the best meals. I'm going to serenade him, and then she just, that's her strategy. Another one is, well, I'm the first and the last. I'm the first wife and I have the firstborn son. And so she's taking pride in that. Well, that's the only way that I can sort of, solidify my position in his home and in his heart. And then you have, Micheline is like, I'm not going to play those games, but she is looking to the future for her children. And she's like, you know what, this man has money. I want to, if it's worth it to me to stay married to him so that I can make sure that my daughters get an inheritance from this man. So everybody is playing it the way. And then you have the newest wife, Auntie Hema. And Auntie Hema, I think for her, she's probably the most heartbroken of all because she comes from the royal family. She is making a concerted effort to not be in a polygamous situation. Then she meets this guy and falls for him. And now she finds herself stepmother to all these kids. She's like in this thing and she's like, I'm not going to have kids. She's made up her mind that she's not going to even bring children into this. And she's going to live the life that she wants to live independently of this. But she's also biding her time. And she's making sure that she has protected herself financially. She has her own money. She's not looking to him for anything, and she's biding her time. And so I think that that's the heartbreaking thing is that each of the women don't necessarily need him for money, but they love him. And that's it. They love him.
So it's interesting how, as much as Nigeria and Ghana fights, how similar we are. We're very,
Yeah.
very similar. down to the marriages. They do the court, they do in that one you call the introduction. They do that when the families come meet each other. Sometimes the bride price is paid, then they go to court and then they do the white wedding. White wedding most of the time I believe is for formality's sake and maybe because of religion. Yeah, but I believe that the real marriage itself is when both families meet and the bride price is paid. That is the real marriage. Yeah, and in the man-woman dynamics, it's also similar, very similar to Nigeria. But I think I want to believe that things are changing because now people want to make better connections. Because I was looking at the women in this book, and it's typical. If I think of conversations I had with my grandmother in the past, I never had anything like love, romance, no. And like my father will always say, these thoughts of love that we talk about are Western. And even the last conversation we had, the book club conversation we had, I think for our men, traditionally, love and care is a man's ability to provide for you. That is it. Uh-huh. So how these women are able to keep their emotions away from the reality of what is happening is what I don't understand. And how they fight for a man's affection. I mm, I
think
don't, yeah.
that is such a great point because I remember a long time ago speaking to one of my aunties, and she said, "You girls are always talking about love, love, love." She said, "You just have to find someone that you like."
Yes.
And I remember thinking about that, but I think that that language, maybe it's a semantic language
Mhm.
because they're saying that, but their actions are actually of women who are love struck because they put up with things even though they have the means to, like, a lot of women, like a lot of people have asked me like, oh, but I was expecting the women to be these broke women that were just dependent on him for money. And I'm like, no, like most African women, like that's not, like they're working, they have their businesses. Like part of a dowry is the man is setting her up, like investing in her, like for her business. He's giving her a sewing machine, he's giving her fabric, he's giving her seed money, because we know that as African women, like we're about our business. So it's not about that. I think that so because I think about that same auntie, and she put up with a lot, and you know because she loved him. And so I think that's the paradox. I think that you have a lot of I don't know, it's like I feel like if they were to have like their own therapy sessions, like if they could really dig into the trauma, like my grandmothers, that generation, my aunties, if they could get the to really sort of dig into the emotions, they couldn't because they were just going, living their lives. But I think if they were to go back, they would ask themselves, like, why didn't I think that I was worthy of being loved? Why did I think that I just have to go ahead and just find someone that I like? You know what I mean? Because I'm dedicating my life to this person. I'm making decisions with him. I'm building a family with him. And then wait a minute, he had a kid somewhere here, or he brought some girl to the house that we all knew was somebody, or the phone rings and it's a girlfriend, and okay, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so yeah.
I think it's a thing of please, if anybody wants to ask any questions, you can use the raise hand button at the bottom so we don't monopolize the conversation. But I want to believe that, first of all, I think when it comes to our mothers and our grandmothers, we need to be very forgiving. Because if I look at it and look at the kind of even relation in terms of relationship advice, what I've had to objectively sit down and critically think about is a lot of these women didn't even know that they didn't even know what they deserve. Let me use that word. Yeah, they didn't know what they deserve. It's almost like you are raised, okay, when you get to this age, a woman gets married. And the thing in our communities is usually is a status thing. Most times they don't ask, oh, so you're a doctor. Wow, doctor of what? Whose wife is she? Yeah, whose wife is she? You go to the market in Nigeria and somebody is being disrespectful. The first thing you hear is, don't you know I'm a married woman? Why are you talking to me like that? I remember when I lived in Lagos, I lived in this compound, and two of my neighbors got into a quarrel. They were quarreling. And I remember the guy saying to the woman, if not that you were married, I would have beaten you up. And I was taken aback. I'm like, oh, wow. So if it was a single girl, he would have gone ahead and beating her up. So that status of having a husband, even if he's a hopeless drunk and nobody sees him, but that thing about having a husband, I think it gives some sort of covering to the woman. So it doesn't matter whether you are happy or not, how he treats you. You don't really see African women saying that they are leaving a marriage because the man cheated. Because they will tell you, oh, you know, men are polygamous by nature. You can't keep eating the same soup every day. But when you ask a man, if a woman cheats on you, what do you do? Oh, no, 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 she's leaving. She's leaving. She's leaving. That's adultery. And they'll tell you, men are polygamous by nature. So I think that our mothers, a lot of them didn't understand a lot of things. And they say because of westernization too, we women now are able to say, oh, I will not tolerate this, I will not tolerate that. It's like I remember the day I was talking to I and some friends, you know, we're talking over drinks. And I said, I don't tolerate nonsense. And the lady said to me, no, Louisa, you can't say that to a man. I'm like, why? But I don't tolerate nonsense. No, 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 you can't say that. You know, it makes you sound too harsh. I said, okay, so how do I get him to know I don't tolerate nonsense? When he does the nonsense, then you can show him from your reaction that you don't tolerate nonsense. So it's very interesting. But I want to come to this. I want to come back to this. I want to come to this book, Kokwi. Looking at Kokwi, I want to ask, our parents' marriages and our parents' relationship dynamics, how do you think it affects us in the choices that we make when looking for partners?
I personally think it affects us greatly because I think that our parents' marriage or those first marriages that we see growing up are our models for what a relationship is.
Okay.
And so if it's like, I know people who parents have been married for like 60 years and they're like, or not, I mean, not 60 years, but a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And they, if they are unable to do that in their own relationships, they feel like failures because they're like, my parents, they've modeled the best thing for me. So I think that, and then on the flip side, I know people whose parents were divorced and they say, oh my gosh, like, I don't want that. I don't want to be divorced. So I actually either don't want to get married or I do want to get married, but now I'm like doing everything that I can to make sure that, divorce isn't what happens. And so I think that, yeah, I think they have a huge influence on the ways that we relate to people. And that's something I think, again, even though this book is not about my parents' marriage, I had to go there. Like I had to think a lot about how my parents' marriage influenced the way that I went about dating. How my aunties and uncles' marriages, the things that I saw growing up, how that impacted the way that I looked at marriage. And
Yeah.
I didn't even know that wasn't at the forefront of my mind until I started dating my now husband and I was like, oh my gosh, like it's getting serious and I'm getting very nervous and I'm getting very anxious because I want to get married to this man, but I'm having all of these different things are coming up for me. Again, I'm remembering aunties and uncles and situations and I'm like, wait a minute, how do I forestall that? And it made me start thinking about my own past relationships and how I showed up in those relationships and how those relationships you know the role that I played and the patterns that I fell into. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even know this was a thing. And so that's really why, even though the book is written in third person, that's why I made the title in first person, My Parents' Marriage, because I really wanted to create community for anybody who has been thinking about that, like, wow, how was my parents' marriage? Or people who needed to begin to think about that.
Okay. and history repeating itself. Because I feel that sometimes the expectation should be that you learn from your parents' marriage the things you don't want in your own marriage and for your children. But sometimes people find themselves in this circle, they find history repeating itself. Like I was reading an article the other day, and that has never crossed my mind because I have always felt that many times history might not repeat itself. For example, you come from a family where the father is abusive. Well, if you see your mom cry all the time, you wouldn't want to be like that as a man. But many times it's not true. So a lady was saying that she was talking about her cousin who was engaged and how the cousin and her mom ended the relationship. And I was wondering why. So she said there's this thing in Igbo land called I think it's Juashe or so. But before you get married, you go and do that investigation, find out about the family. But you know, in the African context, it's usually go and find out if there is madness in that family. It's not usually, oh, go and find out if there's a kind husband and all of that. So she said that the father-in-law to be was abusive and a chronic womanizer. And he got a 15-year-old girl pregnant, took her to have an illegal abortion, and he got locked up. And the abused wife went and bailed him out. So when her cousin did that investigation and found that out, she broke up with the man. So within myself, I was saying, but if his father was like that, that doesn't mean the son will be like that. But she said, listen, if you are dating a man whose father is abusive and the mom stayed in that marriage, there's a likelihood, research has shown there's a likelihood that that man might be abusive to and expect you to stay. And when he abuses you, because the mom is used to being abused and she stayed, she would advise you to stay. But if you meet a man whose father was abusive and the mom left, there's an understanding there that it's wrong to be abusive. And if that son abuses you, the likelihood that the mom would advise you to stay is almost 0%. And I've never thought about it like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, you see?
I do. I think that I think again, because we are born into situations and we see what we see, we take that as that's the way it is, right? Until we get to an age, or like we get to our own sort of agency age where we're like, wait a minute, it doesn't have to be that way. And that's when you start sort of fighting against, tradition, or maybe even advice that you're getting within your family members. That's when you start to have those sort of like inner conversations and fight against that conflict. I do think that it is possible to break patterns, obviously. But I think that you just have to be intentional. And I don't think that we can say just because somebody is an abuser or a philanderer that even that person that's the end of the road for them. They can change. Because again, I think that somebody like Maoli Nuga, he's born into a system that tells him that if you are a rich man, these are the advantages and privileges of being a rich man.
Mhm.
That's the system that he grew up in. So now you're telling him, oh, you know what I mean? Like he's a bad man. Of course, and he too is in his own way, he's grappling with it because he's also in the church. He's, raising the kids in the church, doesn't want to, do that kind of fetish thing. Okay, you don't want to do that. And you were raised by your uncle who's actually, telling you like, it's all about fidelity and charity and putting that in him. But he's torn. You know what I mean? And so I think that it's also just about I think that we can break free from those things, but we have to sort of look at it for what it is and understand like, wow, this has influenced me. This has impacted the way that I look at men, or I look at women, or I think about relationships and commitment. And then what do I do with that information? Like, what needs to change about the way that I move through the world?
Okay. All right. So I'm looking at Kukui now. And what kept striking me here was, oh, she smokes, which tells you her class. So, Kokui and Boris, So you see this class thing, they would always say it's better if a man marries down because he can bring that woman up to his level. But when a woman marries down, it's often a struggle to bring a man to your level because of their ego and all of those things. Sometimes you find yourself suppressing a lot of things because, like, look at when they went to America and she gave what's that lady's name? $200.
Rima, yeah.
Yeah, it was no big deal. Yeah, she gave it to her and she was very practical about it. But Boris came, no, they are our cousins, we just stay. And then he couldn't even tell her that when they really needed money, that he borrowed money to his cousin. So talk to us about class, marrying down. I feel it's
Yeah,
usually a struggle, especially if a man hasn't worked on himself and himself up here. I feel it's a struggle.
I think it's a struggle for both of them. I think that for Kokwi, she was so determined to not have her parents' marriage that she wasn't necessarily thinking about all of the other implications of what it would mean to marry a man that was different from her father.
Mhm.
So she sees Boris, he is a worker. She admires his ambition. He's off to the US for university, community college. And she's not thinking about that the implications of it. She's just thinking, oh, great, I found someone who's different and I'm going to just, tumble into a life with him. And the part of the reason why she's able to think that way is because she is privileged, because she's never really had to grapple with, what's it going to look like if we don't have enough. She's just assuming that she's going to be able to either manipulate her father to give them the money that they need. And she's assuming that in a sly way, she can manipulate him because she's the one that's coming with the money. So she can control him in certain ways. And her answer to a lot of things is money. Whereas for Boris, he is much more pragmatic because he's actually coming out of a situation where his mother, had money, but for the various reasons, they lost everything. And now what they have, his elder brother has sort of commandeered as his own. So he knows that he can't rely on anyone. He has to do everything by his own willpower, strength, resources. And so the two of them have fundamentally different ways of thinking about problem solving or living. And I think that for him, his hesitation with her is that, like, look, I know that this girl, she's not necessarily practical in the ways that I am. And she's not thinking of that because she doesn't have that maturity when it comes to that. So I think that that's a sort of fundamental issue between the two of them that they have to, resolve. And I think that, if we were to forecast the future of this couple, they're going to have to deal with that issue. And they begin to sort of get there because when Kokwi's dad dies, it puts her in a situation where she's not she definitely can't rely on her dad anymore. But I think now she's got to sort of go through the full maturation of what it means to really let him go, because she can't have her cake and eat it too. It's like she wanted, like her father wanted his cake and eat it too. She too wants the benefit of her dad's largesse and wealth without the other things that come with him.
Mm. Because I know on page 47, I underlined Kokwi gulped her beer to mask her insecurity, leaving her father's haunted house of disrespected women was the only plan she was on. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, I think that the main thing for Kokwi is that in some ways she had an arrested development, because when she was young, her mother and her father basically lied to the mom. So they're living as a nuclear family, living a great life as far as she's concerned. And then it all blows up. And so I think that for her, and then when her mother sort of leaves them, goes to Togo, and she's plunged into this house of all these women and the jockeying and the ways and the step siblings who are just awful to her, bullying her, and all of those dynamics. I think that for her, she got into her survival mode plan is one, get out of this house, two, marry a man very different from this guy. And those were the two things that she had going on. And so it was only until she was actually in a marriage herself that she was able to begin to understand the layers of complexity and begin to see her mother in a different way, begin to see the stepmothers even in a different way. Because she's now able to kind of get a sense of like, okay, this is what marriage is you might go in with the best of intentions, or you might go in with certain assumptions, but then life happens and the characters are revealed that, put you force you to kind of make different decisions.
Okay, so I was, okay, after her father died and she came back and she was having a conversation with her mom. Because after living with Boris and experiencing all the imperfections of humanity, of being human, and she apologized to her mom said, "You can't be sorry for what you meant." So my question here was, is life trying to say you have to accept deception and humiliation to stay married? That's the question. Because when I look at African marriages, there seems to be a lot of deception and humiliation, especially to women, because they will always tell you, you know how marriage is. But it shouldn't be like that. I'm not saying that there's any perfect situation. Both parties are, both of us are imperfect people. But I am this kind of person who believes that what I wouldn't want to do you to do to me, I won't do to you. So I make an effort and I try to be intentional about that relationship with the other person. But when you intentionally hurt someone, for example, infidelity, you know how people say, but it just happened. Nothing just happens. You need to toast the woman, you need to court her, you need to make out time to go for your rendezvous somewhere. And then to add insult to injury, you now have unprotected sex. Means you are not even worried that you might contract the disease and give to your wife. So my question here is, in our African setting, is the understanding that for as a woman to stay married, you need to accept deception and humiliation? Because I'm
I
looking
mean,
at all these women. Yeah, I'm looking at all these women because it's just there's so much deception there. And I mean, somebody brought a baby to the house and he had the audacity to introduce the baby. Oh, come and meet your brother. No remorse, nothing. Did he ever get tested for any diseases?
I don't think that the resolve or the lesson is that you have to accept humiliation or betrayal to stay married. I think that what Kokui's mother is trying to say is, look, this is what I was handed, and this was my reaction, or my response was my response. And you're not, she was always telling her daughter, like, life is going to throw things at you that you didn't expect, and you have to take responsibility for your own reaction and response to it. Because she knew, like, Kokui is always looking and blaming her mother in some ways. Like, if you had been a different kind of woman, maybe things would have been different. Or she's looking at her father. Maybe if weren't all about, women and on all of these things, we would have a different kind of life. And I think what Kokui has to realize is that she can't live her life trying to redo or relitigate her parents. She has to live her own life and make her own choices. And so, what I think she comes to when she apologizes to her mother, she says to her mother, now I realize that every marriage is its own thing, in that conversation that she has with her mom, and I think what her mother is advising her when she realizes, like, look, this Boris is not perfect, and he has his own issues, is, look, if you want to be in this marriage, you have to get past this idea that you're going to find a perfect man. You have to, her mother says something that I think is so real when she says that when people think when two things come together, there's instant harmony. But the fact of the matter is that it could also be a collision. It can be a crash. You have to steer the car. You make sure And so that means that you have to take responsibility. You have to say, like, this is how I want to be treated. This is how I need things to get done. And you're both learning each other. The man too has to see, like, okay, this is what I'm not going to be able to get away with this, or this is what needs to change. And some people see, when it comes to infidelity and all these things, people have rushed to judgment and say, oh, leave the man, leave the man. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's the decision of the two people in that relationship, what they want to do and how they're going to move forward from it. For some people, it's okay, I'm going to look the other way, and this is just how he is. So for some people, they're going to berate the man, you're a cheater, you're a cheater, you're a cheater, you're a cheater, and like, never, let it go. For some people, they're going to say, okay, I'm willing to try to resolve this issue. What are you going to do differently? What am I going to do differently? How are we going to make this work? Because I've invested and I do love you, and maybe, whatever. But it's all a decision that everyone makes. And then the people who are in the relationship have to decide how they're going to move forward. And you can't judge. Like, people go to Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, like, well, why did you stay? Why did you stay? And it's like, only the two people in the marriage understand why it works for them. And it's not for us outside to say, it's just, you're going to do what you're going to do in your own situation. If faced with that situation, it's your choice to do what you want to do.
Okay. If I decide to keep flogging this matter, we will talk about this till, because I was going to say, that like I read somewhere, apology without a change is just manipulation. Yeah. And what you tolerate continues. Yeah, because
Yeah, I
the man
agree.
doesn't have the fear of God that he's going to lose you, he will continue. But many women know that once I do this, I'm going to get thrown out. So people are not going to say a lot of married women don't get tempted in the course of their marriage. Come on. You are here with this pot-bellied fellow, and there's this guy with the six-pack who is blah, blah, blah. But reason. And then you go, okay, I have this, I have my husband, I have my children. We make a lot of sacrifices for our children. Hold on. We make a lot of sacrifices for our families and our children. And sometimes I feel that a lot of women have unresolved, a lot of African women, married African women have a lot of unresolved traumas. Yeah, a lot of unresolved trauma that they go to their graves with. So sad. Okay, so let me go to the issue of abortion. Yeah, when I saw that, I was taken aback because we believe that children are a blessing. Yeah, we believe children are a blessing and married women should not get abortions. As the child comes, take it like that. So you are there having 12, oh, yeah, it's your husband, you're in your husband's house. Yeah, and I think she had an abortion twice. I think it was the third time that they decided we're keeping it. Talk to us about that. Because you're an African lady and you're writing about abortion with so much authority, abortion within marriage. How dare you?
I thought about that a lot because, well, first of all, within the context of the story, Auntie Hema is, I think, the figure who, she's the one who basically says to Kokwe, look, you're your father's daughter. I see you out here, you have these, you're dating people, protect yourself. She gives her a tea to drink that would, forestall, children. And I think that for Kokwe, just as for Auntie Hema, Kokwe is so invested in not repeating her parents' marriage that all she has energy for is a marriage. And I think that for her, when she initially gets pregnant, right before they're leaving for the States, she sees this is not a good time. I need this marriage. Like, we're finally on our way. I'm finally out the door. And this child is going to interrupt this. And Boris, too, is feeling the same way because for his own reasons, he also needs to get out of Ghana to be able to get out of the classist system that keeps him down so that he can get the education that he needs to build the family, etc. So when they have that first abortion, the two of them are very much on the same page. In the next phase, when she has that second abortion, it's a similar situation where she's like feeling very much like this marriage is a huge disappointment, and I just want to completely, cleanse myself of this whole situation. And so again, there's this decision in her own heart that, like, I think for her, kids are a complication to marriage. And when we get to the place where she and Boris, decide that they are going to, stick it out, and they're going to go ahead and have this marriage, what is revealed again is this understanding that, like, we have agency. We are the ones who are going to determine how our children are going to be brought up. It's not going to be, it doesn't have to be a repeat of what we experienced growing up. And so I think that again, this idea of, like, the fear for Kokui is so palpable of repeating the past that she can't move forward. And that is metaphoric and literal. Like, the metaphor of it is the baby, she can't move forward. So she can't have children. She can't bring something into the future. She can't even think about the future in that way because she's really stuck in relitigating and fixing the past. Um, and so that is why I did it. Also, I remember, so when I was in school in Ghana, I went to boarding school in Ghana. There was a girl who had an abortion. She, took copious amounts of sugar and was able to, bleed out the baby. And I remember being like, I was like, what, 12 or 13 years old. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, what is happening? And I never even, I didn't even, I mean, at that age, I didn't even think that was something that was possible. But it stayed with me. And there's so many, when I was doing the research for this book, there's so many natural ways that women in our communities have, used birth control. And so I wanted to address that because, you know, yes, culturally, children are very are valued. Children are money in our societies. Children are the ones who are going to work the farm. Children are the ones who bring you that status, who are the emblems of the status. But at the same time, for many, especially a lot of women who, are, of a certain time period, especially during this time period in the 70s, women were waking up to, like, family planning. And, having kids is going to affect my life in X amount of ways. And because I think of the ways that our culture works and the way our cultures work, we're not necessarily having those conversations with men. And so a lot of women are doing what they have to do, on the side to prevent pregnancy or to abort pregnancy. And as a side note, I didn't put this in the book, but the very day that Boris and Kokwe land in New York, there was actually a hearing that was being broadcast by an abortion activist called Bella Abzug, who was talking about abortion. And, that was such a big thing that was happening in the States. And so that was the time period that they're in. These are the times when these questions are coming up for women and these issues are coming up for women. And this was, Kokwe and Boris's sort of response to these things.
Okay. So my views on abortion is because I'm Catholic and I was a pro-lifer. So because as I was reading it, I was going, why have two abortions when you can just have safe sex? Yeah.
Well, so again, this I think that in terms of abortion, it's a very complicated question because personally, I mean, I don't think that abortion is, like, when we talk about it, like the nuts and bolts of taking a baby, a fetus or a baby out of a womb and, saying, like, this is not the right time. I don't agree with that. But I also think that when I was doing the research for this book, I was thinking a lot about because also what was happening in the States is there was something called the Hyde Amendment, I believe, that was happening in the States at that time, which was basically similar to what we're seeing now, that there were some bans in terms of like if you are pregnant and you want to, if you have any if you want to sort of seek an abortion, you had to go before a panel of doctors who would then decide, you know, based on you, what's going on with you medically, if you are able to get that approval to have an abortion. In some cases, in New York State, you were able to have an abortion, I think it was after 12 weeks. I mean, sorry, before 12 weeks. And I was thinking about like what it would mean if you were a woman, you know, I'm thinking about it for myself. If I'm a woman and I'm in a situation that it's like, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant and this is going to impact my life in X amount of ways or whatever the case may be. Like, I don't want to have a child and I'm in this situation. And now to go before to have to apply and go before a panel of doctors would be terrifying. And then also to have to wait out, okay, how long is it going to take for them to make this decision? And then I was thinking too about the fact of okay, 12 weeks, because some women don't know, you know, until, you know, sort of well into the pregnancy that they're even pregnant. Like, so what happens when you have hit that cutoff and you're like, oh my gosh. And so I tried not to impose my own personal thing. And I was just really thinking, like, if I'm a woman and I feel that I can't have a baby and I'm in this situation, what do I do? What would that feel like? And so that's really where I was trying to be, because like I'm a Christian, I'm like Jesus all the way. It's all about the Lord. And you know, I mean, I've not been in that situation where I was, you know, faced with that question. So I was thinking about that a lot. And again, like I said, I thought about that girl in at my school, high school, who got pregnant. Because the thing too is that, you know, when it comes to this conversation, I feel like abortion is like the end of the story, but we don't actually address the beginning of the story. We're talking about women and how we treat women. Right now, if that girl turned up pregnant, oh, she's a bad girl, you know, bad. Just she's kick her out of the school. Bring her to the lowest point. Treat her as a low human being. The same thing, if a woman can't have children in the society, it's, oh, there's something wrong with this woman. What is wrong with her? She can't have kids. And so we demonize women from youth. Like, I mean, I know that from the beginning of ever since I started getting my period, and probably before that, it was always like, be aware, don't get pregnant, don't get pregnant. It's the worst thing that can happen to a girl. You know, and so when we are putting that out there, and then a girl gets pregnant in high school, or a girl gets pregnant for what, you know, whatever, and she, you know, or even if it's a working woman, she has the resources. But we know that a woman who gets punished if she you know, she's going to lose out financially if in her career, because now she has to, you know, take time off. That's going to make her vulnerable at the work. All of these different things. We don't have a society that is really uplifting and upholding mothers, whether they do it the right way or the wrong way. So abortion, we've gotten, it's the abortion is the end of the story. We haven't addressed the root causes of why a woman is in a situation where she's like, my answer is I want to give up this baby. And so that, I think, is something that we need to do. If we really genuinely don't believe in abortion and we genuinely see that this is life, right? Then how are we supporting that life? And how are we also putting more onus on men? Because the girl does not become pregnant, or the woman does not become pregnant by themselves. So how are we also involving men and saying, look, you got this girl pregnant. Are we talking to our boys and our sons in the same way and saying, don't get a girl pregnant? Make sure that you know what I mean, handle yourself sexually with respect and integrity. Are we doing those things? So I just, again, I really tried to write this book from a place of getting in the skin of these characters. And again, we go back to Kokwi. She has a very distorted view of relationship and marriage, and a distorted view of and that distorted view infects her own thinking about her own life. So she's not mentally in a place where she wants to have kids. She wants to get the marriage perfect first. And of course, we know there's no perfect marriage. And it's only until she can get to that lesson that she is then able to say, okay, I want to bring, I'm willing to bring children into a marriage.
Okay, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. But when you were talking about the girl who got pregnant and had an abortion in high school, in Nigeria we say everybody is doing it, but it's who gets pregnant that is labeled as the bad girl. Yeah. But some responsibility should also be put on the men because you don't impregnate yourself. Yeah, you don't just impregnate yourself as a woman. But sometimes, sometimes you ask yourself, why are women having more protected sex? Sometimes they will tell you, well, even if we insist on the man using protection, the man will refuse. So as women, it's on us to take extra caution because we are the ones who carry the pregnancy. But I think the responsibility is on both parties. Yeah. Let me see. Let me just quickly go to the chat. Please, I'm opening the floor for anybody who wants to ask questions. Miss Hemilin, I see you here. I know you read part of the book. Lola, you read part of the book. Laide is actually swimming, so you keep seeing her going in and out. Hemilin says there's a saying that mothers raise their daughters and love their sons. Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find the book is very progressive. I know we talk about the selfish characters, but I mean, even now we're dealing with the abortion issue. For those of you who know me, I've experienced teenage pregnancy. I have my niece who just had a baby. Well, the baby you saw before, she's now 10 months. But the reason my niece is with me is because the social services tried to take the baby because she's 14. So Nana mentioned the demonization and the responsibility and the judgment that are placed on pregnancy. And I know you mentioned that the pregnancy or the abortion ends there in a person's life, but it's the same as having a miscarriage. I think it continues. And I think it is traumatizing. Imagine you have your baby and a system is coming to take that baby from you. So they don't even give you the opportunity to say yes or no, or who do you want that baby to go to? And in terms of classes, yes, we don't have as much maybe physical classes or the description as we once have because the same women have fought so much to change that. Because the women in the book, yes, it might have seemed transactional because, as we know, every story has a woman behind it. Because women go into saving mode, but also defensive mode. Because they're protective, and that's how they protect themselves and their future children. So sometimes they do suffer to pave the way for the ones coming. And I think that's what I like with the stories in the book, and that's how I'm seeing it, because there is a lot of ongoing reflections to improve ourselves or to say, okay, this is what's now, this is what I'm dealing with now, but it's going to be something different for my children. So I see that on all fronts. So thank you for that, Nana.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Lola? Is Lola there? Lady? Okay.
Oh, sorry, I'm here.
Okay. Lola, do you have any questions for Nana?
No, not really. I just
Okay.
rejoined, so
All right.
thank you. But thank you for the book. I enjoyed it. I haven't really finished it, but I'm looking forward to completing it. So thank you, Nana.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. So I want to go into the relationship between Boris Cousins in the US, the couple. So
Yeah.
Kokwi and Boris arrive. Same day, Boris is taken to the taxi place, and then the cousin is expecting Kokwi to help her watch the kids. Talk to us about their relationship because there was a lot of bitterness there in that relationship, especially on the part of the wife, because the husband was, yeah, he was doing his best to provide, but he had an affinity for women,
Yeah.
extramarital, yeah. So talk to us about that relationship.
Yeah. So Kokwi and Boris, leave Ghana and they go and stay with Boris's cousin Sami and his wife Frima and their daughter Jane. And one of the first this is sort of the beginning of like the Kokwi sort of bumping up against like impracticality versus practicality. She had this idea that, oh, they're going to the States, it's going to be amazing. And they end up staying in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, in Boris's cousin's one-bedroom apartment. So they're all kind of so Boris and Kokwi are sleeping on the couch bed, and the Sami and his wife are hustling, right? Like Sami's is working during the day in a hospital. And at night he will take on work if he can. And so what he does is he gets Boris a taxi to drive. One of their friends in the community has a taxi. So when he's not driving, he says, I've got something for you. You can make some money driving this taxi. Awesome. So Boris is like, this is great. I can make some money. And Kokwi's instantly like, no, this is not cool. I thought this guy was doing well and doing better for himself than this. So that's sort of her rude awakening. The other thing is that Sami and his wife have a strained relationship. Sami is, kind of a philanderer, not kind of, he is a philanderer himself. And the wife is embittered by it. And she's also just embittered by the life that she's living. And she's really, just, at this point, and this is something that Kokwi comes to find out later too. She's sort of resentful of the fact that this Sami now has brought his cousin and his cousin's wife into their one-bedroom apartment to stay with them. They don't have a lot. They don't have a lot of resources. And so when they come in, of course, Kokwi doesn't know all of this until a little bit later. This is the tension that is sort of simmering under the surface. And so and the thing that's complicated with Frima and Sami's marriage is that there's also violence in their marriage. There's also violence in their relationship. And Kokwi sees it later. But I mean, she's a battered woman, but also, and she's being cheated on. So she's just sort of lost her luster in many ways. And I think that for Kokwi, she looks at Frima and she's afraid of what she sees because in some ways that marriage is her nightmare. That marriage is a mirror that she's looking in it that is very grim. And she wants to get out of this house because she's like, oh my gosh, like I left my father's house. I don't want to come to somebody else's house and deal with this tension. But I think that over time, the two women, their relationship matures because Kokwi, I don't know, she feels for the lady, even though she has a sort of recoil reaction. Like she wants to get away from her, but she also sees her. And so I think that again, their relationship is this sort of like the worst case scenario in Kokwi's mind. And I think also too, it's a way to highlight the potential gender dynamics, because one of the first things that Frima cautions Kokwi about is kids. she's like, make sure you get your birth control straight because, I was doing it the traditional way and I ended up getting pregnant and, go as quickly as you can to the clinic and get that sorted out. So I think that, again, that marriage was sort of Kokwi being steeped in her worst nightmare. And how is she going to react and respond to that? In short.
Okay. I think that is I think that is the reality of many immigrants when many immigrants, when they move to a foreign country, like when you were talking of New York, America, I think back home, people who have never left the country have this image, this impression of what it's like. But they don't know, like I have never been to New York, but they say the subway is dirty, there are homeless people and druggies around all over the place and all of that. So that harsh reality, and then the struggle. And when Kokwi got that first job, taking stock of deliveries, I was actually taken aback that she quit that job because the Ewe brother brought free meat to her. Yeah, I was very, very surprised that she quit. And I'm wondering, okay, is it because of the luxury of the thought that she could easily reach out to her dad to ask for money? Was that it? Because yes, you could have said, oh no, I'm not going to take back any free meat and continue the job because you want to earn. But I felt that wasn't enough for her to walk away from an easy job.
Yeah, I think that Kokwi is somebody who is not thinking practically because she doesn't have to, or she doesn't have to wrestle with the questions and the ways that maybe somebody who's not in a financially good place does. So just as you're saying, Boris had the same reaction, like, well, you could have stayed in the job. And Boris gets into his own little sort of underground stuff. And I think that for Kokwi, she feels above it all. And in some ways, I mean, and she doesn't have to do that. Her father set them up with enough money that they didn't have to go and stay with the cousin and do that whole kind of thing. And I think that that was part of her frustration. Um, but yeah, I see Lola's hand up.
Yes, I just want to say, as far as I got, I feel like Kokwi, there's a certain level of immaturity with her, right? That she, and also maybe a little bit of entitlement. I'm not sure. As I said, I haven't finished the book, but the immaturity comes out because she wants all these things. She has all these high expectations of how things are going to be, but yet she hasn't really lived the real life or the real, a real existence of being in the real world to really know how things go. So she comes at a lot of these things I find with a lot of immaturity, and hopefully by the end that changes. But I'm looking forward to finishing that.
I think that's a great point. Yeah, I think that Kokwi does not necessarily, she hasn't had to really, especially somebody coming from Ghana where, she has lived in that 1% and she hasn't had to think about, like those sort of material needs has not been something that she has to have had to have any real kind of grappling about or figuring out like what does it take to survive. And I also think in some ways it's good that she has that kind of naivete because I think that one there are I know a lot of like my parents' friends you know, they also, a lot of them were rich kids who came to the States because at that time, to have the money to even leave Ghana with a ticket and go to the US, I mean, you had to have some sort of backing, whether it was a rich uncle, a rich parent, whatever. And so I know a lot of, I had a lot of that as well, like seeing that. And I wanted that to be part of the narrative because I think that there's this idea that all immigrants come in and they're super like downtrodden and they should just be grateful for the crumbs that America gives them or wherever they emigrate to. But a lot of people who emigrate do come from some privilege. We look at Kamala Harris and her family, like her mother was like of the top caste. She comes and she struggles in the States, but it's like I wanted to play with that tension of you come from something that's rich, and we can even metaphorize that we come from rich cultures, but then you come to the Western world and they don't see the value of that. And how do you deal with that? So that's, I think, part of what Kokwi is dealing with. So I think that it's good that she kind of has that perspective, and she has that I don't know if dignity is the right word, but she has that sort of she feels above it all. And some of it is like negative, obviously, because she thinks she's too good to get down and dirty and get in the trenches. But at the same time, she's also able to see it for what it is. She's like, I don't want to, she was like, I'm not, I mean, yeah, things are a struggle, but it's not that bad that I'm sitting here going to abide by you stealing meat from, whatever this system, this organization is trying to help broke people, hungry people get meat. And now we're going to steal it and sell it. And what are we doing? So that's one side. On the other side of it, yeah, the Boris is looking at it practically, like, wait a minute, you didn't have, like, even that guy who was like the Ekua brother at the shop, he's like, okay, if you don't want to do it, just look the other way. Like, you're literally just a body here. Look the other way and let us all make our money. And I think we all confront those things, right? Like in our jobs, even today, like, is our company saving the world? No, but it's a check. Like, and we all have those questions. So it's not to demonize either of them for their perspective. I just think that they just have different ways, fundamentally different ways of thinking about what it means to survive.
Thank you, Nana. So I want to go to the little girl because it's easy to overlook. It's easy to overlook how I read in the book and how she deals with her parents fighting. Most of the time, she just disappears. She just and then she leaves. Talk to us about how family dynamics can affect children, which often leads to adult trauma, and how children deal with this trauma. Because the few scenes where I saw where the child was mentioned and her parents were about to have a disagreement, she had a way of just disappearing. So did she just disappear because, her mom had in the past said, leave this place, or on her own, she just leaves? So talk to us about that.
Yeah, that little girl, Jane, means so much to me because I think that she is in some ways also a mirror of Kokwi. Kokwi is the adult version of Jane, though in a different, context. But this idea that, when we see things as kids, we don't necessarily have the language. We can't, we're sort of in that situation. But if you see your mother and father always in contention, if you see your father beating your mother, if you see your mother hurling a kettle at your father, that imprints you. And, but when you're that young, you feel the confusion of, I don't feel safe. And yet I do, because I love my family. My parents are good to me. I know they love me, but I feel unsafe in this environment. And I feel, so when they are going through whatever they're going through, let me just get out of here. So she runs to the bathroom, and she's having, it's having a visceral impact on her. Her digestion, it's messing with her. But again, her parents are not in a position to even notice those things or see it in that way. Kokwi can see it, but Kokwi is so fearful of what she's seeing that she's not in a position to really reach out and help and support this little girl, or the family in that way. Her response is flight. Flight. She's like, flight, get us out of here as quickly as possible. But yeah, I think that little girl, when we sort of, if we were to forecast like what her future is going to be, I'm very interested in her future. Because yeah, this is what she's growing up in, and that marriage doesn't get better.
Okay. So,
Well, her future is going to look like probably something similar, unless she
I
gets
don't, I don't,
help.
I don't, I don't, I think, I don't think it's going to necessarily be the same thing as Kokwis because she's a different person in a different set of
No, no, no.
circumstances.
I meant with her parents'
Oh, yes,
relationship.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, I
With,
think, I don't think that that marriage is going to get any better.
right.
Um, who knows? I mean, I've seen things turn around. I will never forget. I was talking to an older sister friend of mine, and she said to me, something that, boils my blood when I think about our African marriages is that in Ghana, she was speaking about specifically, she said that the man will cheat, the man will do all the negative things, and then he gets what did she said? Then he gets prostate cancer. They go to church, they're wearing matching cloths, and then the next thing you know, they're celebrating 50 years of marriage, and like all was well. And she just had me cracking up because she said, "Oh, come on." So you never know. I'm a person who's very optimistic about these things, and so you never know. But I personally seeing how things are simmering in that household, if I were to forecast it, I think it gets worse. And I think that those things are going to have untold impact on that little girl and how she moves through the world. I've seen it, I've seen it.
mm,
And again, as you say, it's the simmering, right? If people don't choose to get the help that they need or even talk about these things, because there is no talking about these
Exactly.
things. It's just okay, that happened, we'll just sweep it under the rug and then it goes away, but it doesn't really. So keeping up appearances, I feel like that's I don't want to say it's an African thing, but it's more common in Africa where we keep up appearances, but beneath the surface, there's so much hurt and betrayal and all kinds of stuff going on, right? It's here in the Western world too, and it's all over the world, I think, but for the most part, I think we are masters at keeping up appearances, and it is not helping us in any way at all, especially for future generations. I think now it's getting better where, maybe as we're talking more about these things, we're starting to realize that this is not actually helpful. And in my line of work, I'm seeing more and more Africans open up and talking about these things because they don't want to have the life that their parents had. It was, filled with lies and betrayals and, lack of trust and all of those kinds of things. And, we're now seeing that people are wanting a different kind of way. And there is a different kind of way if we, are able to put in the work and work towards something more sustainable and happier.
Absolutely. I think that something that definitely something that I, heard a lot growing up is like, you don't want people in your business. And part of that was a fear of witchcraft. Like, hey, if the people know, you know what I mean? Like you don't want people to know even when you're traveling because there's this fear that somebody is going to do something or what have you. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is again this kind of you fake it till you make it, right? Like, I'm just going to sort of plod along and you know eh, pretend that all is well and not address it. I'm going to look the other way because that's my survival mechanism. And I think that, I mean, it is part of it's something that is in in a lot of West African cultures, but I think it's all over the world. It's a human, it's again this like flight or fright, that response, like the trauma response is different for different people. But I think that one of the things that for me, now I'll go back into my faith, that is really helping me is that it says that boast in your weaknesses, because when you can boast in your weaknesses, it's like God's strength is revealed all the more. So instead of trying to pretend that everything is perfect, that's where the miracle is, right? The miracle is because it looked really bad and it was really bad. And then God stepped in. And so I feel like but it's a hard thing to sort of expose yourself because you don't know what people are going to do with that exposure. Because people do take advantage and people do manipulate the knowledge that they get in various ways. And it's something that you have to grapple with, especially with something as tender as marriage and family. Like, how much do you put out there? How much is helpful to put out there? And who do you put it out there to? Like, having that trusted group of people who really know what's going on, who can stand with you, who can advise you in the right way. You need those things. But one thing I do know is that if you don't say anything, no one will know how to help you.
Thank you, Nana. I think from everything you said, when you were talking about your conversation with an older sister friend, it's like when I was having a conversation with someone, I was talking about the trajectory of a Nigerian marriage. I would say Nigerian because that's what I know. I said the trajectory of a Nigerian marriage is a man meets this lovely girl he likes, he pesters you. Oh, I want to have a relationship with you. Then you start the relationship and then he marries you. He marries you the first year, the first 6 months to 1 year, he's possessive. Don't talk to my wife, she's my wife. Then the baby comes. As the baby starts coming, that's the time when he's supposed to build that bond with you. But at that time, he starts to focus on women outside. So you as a mother, you are there struggling, grappling with, raising your children. So through the years, through nursery, primary, secondary school to university, you have gotten used to being without him and doing it by yourself, on your own. And then the man is focused on the women outside. But now you have gotten used to being by yourself, doing things independently. Yeah, he brings money, that's fine, but you don't care. And then the children graduate, start to get married. As a woman, your focus now is my kids are getting married. Your focus is on the grandkids. You're excited that, yes, now the grandkids are coming, you're going to focus on them. Now he is older. He has retired. He's retired. He doesn't look the way he used to look. He doesn't have the money he used to have. Women outside are not really interested in him anymore. And then he comes back and then tries to build the friendship he hasn't built in these 30 years. And like they say, at that time, maybe he has prostrate, whatever, not really that useful anymore. And then becomes a nuisance to you. And that's when they remember that, oh, you are my wife. Then let's go to church together. Let's wear matching outfits. And, so it's sad. I went to church one time in Nigeria, and I remember that the priest was saying, he said couples should come forward so he could pray for them. And he said, if we had the opportunity to come back to this world again, if you want to come back married, if you want to come back and be married to who you are married to today, put up your hands. More men put up their hands than women. A lot of women didn't put up their hands. I wasn't surprised. A lot of women didn't, because I told somebody one day that you need to understand something, that forgiveness is not gender-based. It's not only for women. Forgiveness is both ways. Both men forgive, women forgive. But in ours, I don't know what it is. But it's a very harsh and sad reality. Okay, I want to come back.
But I want to quickly say something. I want to say that I think that part of why I wrote this book is to one, have us sort of have these conversations, but also to know that it doesn't have to go that way. And it does, that's that story, that trajectory that, the sister friend was talking about. It doesn't have to be that way. And we don't have to feel like marriage is not for us. If it's genuine, if you genuinely want a companion in this life, and you want to be married, but you're afraid because of these kinds of negative trajectories that we've seen, negative impact on women that we've seen in our lives, it doesn't have to be that way. We can have a different kind of future, because I think that there's a lot of pain that's unresolved. And like I said, a lot of it came up for me when I started, like, oh my gosh, like it's getting close, like this is getting serious and I do want marriage. But now I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, like, hey, is this something that I can handle? Is this what I can expect? Can I only expect, infidelity, or can I only expect, just disrespect and humiliation? And those are real things if you've seen it and if you've, witnessed it. But at the same time, it can be different. But so I just want to say that there's hope. It doesn't have to flow that way.
Okay. Laide, okay, we'll take Laide's question and then I will wrap up with Mauli's death. Okay, Laide, please go ahead.
Sorry, my apologies for if you butting in late in the conversation. So thank you for writing the book, Nana. So I was saying earlier, it's basically my life, I come from a polygamous home, 18, 19 siblings, almost 9 women. So a few things I wanted to add. First, Louisa talking about when the guy is old. So my dad is in that phase now, So after having all of these wives, most of them have left. There is one at home. And of course, the one at home is never good enough. So at 75, when I went home in April, I was asked to visit somebody, a few people. And one of them, I'm like, who is this person? One of the sisters lied and said, oh, it is PA. So I'm like, what PA? Okay, he's retired. But anyways, so then one of the other sisters started advocating that the wife at home wasn't cooking for him. So this one has been home for 25 years before my mom passed away. Then I remembered when I was young, because like Kokwe, I was unlike Kokwe, my mom was Kokwe, my mom was the first wife, but unlike her, I always remained with my mom and my dad would visit. So maybe once a month for 4 days. Like he's got to make the visits all around all these women, right? So you see all these things. You see the pattern, and some of them you don't process them because you don't even know what's going on. Like sometimes you see this new mom, but then you also know that this is kind of different because we lived in a block of flats, like 18 flats. So you would see that your family dynamic is different. So going back to the little girl, I forget her name now. I read the book a few weeks ago. The little girl in New York, I know, is Lola still here? I know Lola was saying she's probably going to repeat the pattern. Are you there, Lola? And then our writer,
Yeah,
Nana said, and Nana said maybe she would not. At the end of the day, history has a way of repeating itself. I quite agree with both of you. But so, like in my own situation, what I took away from the family dynamic that I was in was one, I will never be emotionally or financially dependent on anyone, or any man. So that's what I took away. And then I assimilated that it was normal to share your man. Do you understand? Because that's what I saw. I assumed that it was normal. Now it's not like I want to share somebody, but at the end of the day, it's such a difficult thing to see for people not to want to step out. Like it's all over. Even after many years, people still step out. So, just to piggyback on whatever Lola and Nana were saying, the little girl in question, even if the process does, the pattern does repeat itself, she's probably going to process it differently, respond to it differently. She's probably just going to walk away, which is what most people in my situation, because you try so hard not to let wherever you're running from, sometimes it catches you, But am I going over time? Sorry. So I'll just round up. So whatever you're running from, it sometimes catches you. But hopefully, in the little girl's situation, maybe she'll recognize the pattern earlier and just run away, And maybe like her mom, she probably would have gotten that education as opposed to saying, okay, I'll take all the the jobs, menial jobs. Why you go do that? So anyway, sorry, I can't respond to a lot of things more because I was half the time in a swimming class. So thanks, Nana, for coming with us, and thank you for your book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was nice to see that, I don't know, maybe it's West Africa, but the polygamy is the same all over. The men are selfish, and most of the women are poor, and at the end of the day, the children suffer from it. So thank you.
Thank you for joining during the swim class. It means a lot
Sorry.
to me. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lydie. I think from what you've said, and you know how looking at the little girl and the things you are somehow willing to tolerate, you know, infidelity and some other things. I think things affect children differently. I grew up with a dad who was in the police force. So growing up in the barracks, we saw a lot of these things. You know, when you stay around military men, you know the kind of things. And I think maybe that is why I'm very, very firm in certain things. There are things I would not tolerate because I've chosen that my life will be different and my story will be different. The only side effects of being like that is that many times no man ticks all those boxes. So yeah, so you find yourself asking questions, what am I willing to bend a bit, you know, to that is where you find yourself. But I want to ask the question. So I'm wrapping this up before we take the group photo. Let me see. Okay, some people have stepped out. I'll wait for them to step back in. Then we'll take a group photo. But so Mawuli now, I feel he got the last laugh because he left nothing for his kids. On page 222, who is this? Kokui says here, Ma, they are still his children. Kokui said, I'm sure Daddy has left all his kids something in his will. Because when he passed away, that was the opportunity for the wife in the house to exert her authority to say, okay, I was his wife. But from my understanding, I was really listening to, he didn't leave anything for his kids.
Well, he left things for his kids, but it was the wives that he did not leave anything to. And I think that that was his last sort of FU in a way. But I think really why why that is mainly because, again, I think that we have an unresolved approach to how we're dealing with marriage in our societies, and really in the way it is right now, it's benefiting men, and that's really what it is. It's a question to say, look, like you're like Lala, I think Lala is her name, was saying, is that, at the end of the day, the women and children suffer greatly in this situation. And even though the men are also, because I think that Mauli, if he were a lot, like if he were able to sort of be that fly on the wall at his own funeral or at his own burial, and his children don't come, and everything he's built, it's like it's gonna get squandered because, you know, there's no kids that even want it. They're all over the place. So I think that I think it's really just to say that we need to resolve our own understanding of what it means to be in marriage.
Okay. Hermelyn, I see your hand up.
Well, in terms of all the discussion, I feel there is a big, what should I say, an issue with commitment, like deep commitment in relationships, be it on the male side, the women's side. And also women also cheat, just for us to know. Women are just smarter cheaters, but we'll find our satisfaction. I mean, it's being around. It's just they have their ways of being satisfied. They're not deprived too much. It may look on the outside because there is a societal factor, but I feel a lot of the issues in relationships, even when people are married for many years, it's my stuff versus your stuff, or there is like that fear. And just as you guys were speaking, it keep coming up in my mind when I speak with couples, it's a lot of, some things are just their own, even in terms of sometimes, with the cell phone, somebody has a password, when the wife doesn't know the password, or there's a bank account that, somebody knows and have access to, but then another one might keep private. And even for me, growing up, in my country, again, they married, but not the same way as in Africa. So a lot of women are very possessive and they do take charge. For example, single parenting is very common, and we carry the names of our mothers if our parents are not married. And there is no man, like grandmas will say, listen, you're sure about your mom, but not about your dad. So we were raised that way. And for me, I have more aunts than uncles, but they always have a plan B. And growing up, I just know that. Even when like the books, the research will tell you couples, it's important to trust. This trust has a question mark. It's like trust, but with a plan B or a backup plan. And just as you guys were speaking or everybody's discussing, I'm just wondering if anybody sees that. How can you relate to that? And how does it, I don't know, how can we change or go forward? Would it be something that we want to change, or how can we modify to make our relationships work better, maybe, or more successful?
Emily, something you said there that struck me there was when single mothers have kids, the child takes the mother's name. In Nigeria, it's very different. So even if the man threw you out, threw you over the fence, tried to drown you and choke you, then drags you along the road and runs over you with a car, in the end, you advise, give the child his father's last name so people won't call the child a bastard. It's very sad.
My country, no. In that little island, I don't know which part of Africa they came from, they take charge.
Yeah. For us, it's very sad. Even if the man never contributed a penny, when that child is getting married, they will say, go look for your father, so that the people you are marrying, especially if it's a woman, so that the family you are marrying into don't think that you don't have a family. Yeah. So it's still this thing of, so I think my problem with our culture is always, what will people say? What will people say? I'm sensing that in Ghana too. It's always about what will people say. But my question here is, what about me as an individual? How do I feel? But they will say, okay, an individual doesn't exist independently. We all exist in a society. And sometimes they ask, that's where sociology asks, are we prisoners of our societies? Are we? Because it's still a lot of, people will say, hey, people will say, oh, once they clap their hands, people will say. But what you said, Hemelin, yeah, for us, you give the child the father's name. At least I know people, a lot of people like that. You even go as far as giving, because in Nigeria, you can tell where a person is from the person's name. I can tell if you are Igbo, Yoruba, Edo. Some mothers go as far as giving that child a traditional name from the father's, let's say as Amedo, and I got impregnated by this Yoruba man who doesn't care. Some children will go, some women will go as far, they will name the child Ayo, that's joy. Ayo, after the man. So that when people come into the family to visit and they see Ayo running around an Edo household, you already know that Ayo, it signifies there's a father. And the father it just signifies there's a father. Whether he's involved in that child's life or not, we don't care. It's still that thing of what will people say. So that is my biggest question. I think we are still prisoners of our society. And I don't know if we are ever going to be 100% free, completely free. I don't think so.
Lisa, I just wanted to add, Miss Emily said, how can we move forward with relationship?
Yes.
I think it's to manage our expectations, like nobody, and we don't have to follow societal norms.
Mm.
Like everybody is different, and try to customize things to whatever works for you. That's what I think. Because we go into these relationships and marriages expecting miracles. Nobody is coming to save you, you know. And it's just nice, and hopefully find somebody that thinks along that line, and then maybe thinks we can get along better. And on a side note, somebody who said, I forget, I'm all over the place today, sorry. Somebody said something about inheritance. Yes. So this is probably, it's a little related. I don't know if anybody watches the Braxton Family Values. Tony Braxton and her sisters, they have a reality TV show. Okay. They've been at it for almost 10 years. So recently, Tawanda, one of the sisters, she died. She was the only one who managed to remain married for over 30 years, even though the man was, I don't know if he was abusive physically, but he was verbally abusive, financially. He was a serial cheater. But Tawanda was such a, I don't know, different person. She stayed married to this man for 30 years. Last year, she died of cancer and they had one child together. Guess what she did? She left this man zero, zero. Like, go F with all the women you were cheating with for 30 years. She left everything to her one child. So, yeah, so Miss Emmeline was saying things are different and women are doing things. And Miss Nana also said that. So it's a lesson to us all, right? They can do their own. Like the protagonist in the book. Yes, he left his children stuff. Maybe not easy enough because obviously one of the wives tried to take those things. But ultimately he didn't give a F about all of that.
Now,
So yeah.
it was very clear because
So more women should be like that.
I wish.
Tie up your stuff before you
Can we
go.
take a quick
Group
break, please, before I forget?
I got my
I,
book here.
Anna,
I
Anna,
got my book here.
Anna
I,
can
I
respond.
Sorry,
want
sorry, Miss Nana. We're not releasing you, eh? Sorry.
no, no, no. I'm so thankful that this has sparked this conversation. I just want to say it was just, I really just want us to, I hear a lot of pain because of things that we've seen in our past. And I think, I hope that, you know, part of it is about sort of the next generation, but also it's about us, that we deserve to be whole and we deserve to address these things that have made us feel like, oh, because of what I saw, I think when we're in that space, we're not dealing with the trauma that it is on us. And if we don't address it, we inadvertently pass it on.
Okay.
Even if we don't have kids, even if we don't, but it's sort of like then the conventional wisdom becomes, oh, if this is as a woman, you need to do this. And I just want us all to just get to that place of healing, whatever that means, for each of us, so that we can be free, because we do deserve to walk into relationships not having this sort of looking over our shoulder. You know, we deserve to go into a relationship with trust and hope. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But you know what I mean? I don't want us to go in thinking like, oh my gosh, like I have to have my walls up, my guard up, my fence up, and always have to have that plan B, C, D, and E. Because I don't think that I think that if you're in that space, you can't be fully authentic. And then therefore you can't also get that authentic love that you need.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nana. I think sometimes
I agree.
I say you
You
are too.
get,
Oh, Shola, you want to say
sir,
something?
I was just gonna say you get what you project, right? And yes, the healing starts with us. Right. I do agree with Nana that there is hope. They can be fantastic relationships. There are examples of them. Unfortunately, we don't see them as much, but they are there, and we can have the kind of relationship we want to have as far as we are healed and as far as we, temper our expectations, as Lala said, and just look on the brighter side of things instead of looking always on the negative and always thinking somebody's out to get you. Well, if you're always thinking somebody's out to get you, somebody will always be out to get you. That's just the way it goes, right? So our thoughts influence us greatly, and unfortunately we are what we think. And if we don't heal, then we just continue to perpetuate whatever we have experienced.
Okay. Thank you, Lola. Okay, let's take Tosh says the change needs to start with how we as women raise our boys. And that's very true. Please, let's take our group photo. Big smile, everyone. Lyde, where are you?
Oh, 1 minute. 1 minute.
Okay.
I lost the screen. Sorry.
Well, thank you again. I want to just take a
I'm
moment.
multitasking.
Thank you,
It's
Mo.
a Saturday morning. There's a million other things, and now into afternoon, 2 hours on a Saturday. I appreciate it so very much. I thank you for your insights. I wrote this book for us as women to have these conversations, and I really do desire for us to enter our relationships from a place of, I mean, no one's ever going to be fully healed 100%. I mean, we're all like works in progress, but I want us to know that we deserve to enter a relationship with hope, and that it doesn't have to fall into that negative spiral or that negative cycle that maybe we saw, or that traumatized us. It can be different, and we deserve that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Lyde, we are waiting for you now. Okay.
I'm here. I'm here. I'm here.
Big smile. Okay. I think we're good. So, Nana, I just want to say a very big thank you. Thank you for taking us places with this book. Thank you for giving us food for thoughts with this book. Yeah, this book did that. It took me places, and I'm just like, wow, okay. Sometimes you can't, sometimes, like they say, you have to leave. What getting older has taught me is that sometimes you have to leave people where they're at. You can't, and then with our traumas, we have to find ways of dealing with them so that we don't bleed on people that didn't cut us. Yeah, because that is what a lot of us are bleeding on people who didn't cut us, because we forget that people can't fix what they didn't break. Yeah, we forget that. Yeah, forget that. So I want to say thank you very much, Nana, for this book. Thank you for today. Just a brief announcement. The end of our book year is November. We are 5 years old. I can't believe we are 5. We're 5.
Wow.
We're 5.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you all. I wouldn't have, we wouldn't have come this far without the support from everybody. So I'm always grateful. I'm eternally grateful for everybody. This book club, has brought people, like I've connected with Nana, which is very interesting. Nana, how did we connect? It started with the podcast, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Podcast on her. Yeah, I remember I came across her book Powder Necklace when I was still in Nigeria. I couldn't get it to buy, but I just had it in my head that this. But it came full circle from the podcast, then to the collection.
Go back again. Powder Necklace. Why are we not reading that?
I haven't read that book yet.
Go back. Okay, next year.
Necklace. She wrote. Oh, that was her first book.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to bring this young lady back.
Yeah, but I couldn't get it to buy in Nigeria. But that Powder Necklace, I remember that title, and I kept it, I think, in my old laptop. And then years later, when she wrote a children's book, that's when I was struggling and trying to start writing my children's books. I reached out to her, and I was very, very surprised. And we just connected. And then the collection of short stories last year that got us, 6 authors from 5 countries. Yeah, and now this again. One day, Nana, our path will cross. We'll meet. We'll sit over.
I know, in person. Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for what you do, because writing is a tough business, as you know, and we need readers and we need community. So the fact that you convene this community here is just I'm so grateful. Thank you for all your support. And I look forward to continuing to support you as well in your beautiful books. And all of you here, again, thank you so much for your time, your energy, your resources. I know it costs money to buy a book. It costs time. No, I mean, and look, times are tough. So to take, $12 to $30 to buy a book is not It's not
We're
easy. You
here
can,
for you, Lana. We're here for
but
you.
I
Write more books.
appreciate it. I appreciate it. And I just want to let you know how thankful I am. And I would just ask if you can, if I can beg even more of your time, if you can write a review. I just posted it in the chat. So if you get up to 25 ratings on Amazon, it will boost the book in the search results. And if you
Okay.
can make it to
Oh,
50
wow.
reviews, yeah, if
Okay.
you make it to 50 reviews, they start suggesting it the book in the similar to section. So all
Okay.
of these help surface the book to get it to readers.
Okay. Okay.
We didn't know that.
Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know
I
that.
just learned about this. So yes, so
Like
even if you
it's
bought it on another website, if you can just write a review on Amazon, it really helps greatly.
okay. Okay. Yeah. And FYI, my two children's books are being presented in Lagos as we speak. So I can't be in Nigeria, so I have a representative. That's an African Christmas and the best party jollof rice.
Oh
So
my
my second, yeah.
goodness.
So my secondary school mate is helping me. He's presenting at Akada Children's Festival because I can't be there. So yeah. So I just want to say thank you all. 2024 has been a very interesting year. So, but I don't know. I'm so grateful for this community. Because as a person, I don't make friends easily, but somehow I have built family, you know, book club with this book club. That is what it has done for me. So yeah, so I just want to say I'm very grateful for that. And thank you, Nana. Also, thank you to your publisher for sending me this. Yeah. So the amazing thing is that, yeah, when these books come, I just post in the group. I have extra copies, who needs, and then we share, and then others buy. So it's done on a first come, first serve basis. So yeah. So, but thank you very much. I really, really appreciate that. Miss Hemilyn, she joins us from Montreal. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Lola is my neighbor. Lide to in Montreal. Linda, nice to meet you. Uncle,
Nice to meet you.
yeah, Uncle Albion, we would have loved to see your handsome face, but your camera is off. Oh. But Nana says you're her uncle, so nice to meet you. At least heard your voice. He ordered his own copy today. So
My uncle, thank you for being here.
yeah. So thank you everyone and have a lovely Saturday. See you all next month.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank you.
ladies.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.